Wendy, can you go get something for him or drawing?
To coordinate this? Okay, there we go. I'm not sure what's going on here. Hi, I'm sorry, we're having some technical difficulty. Please bear with us for just a second here. Let me see here. Okay, great. Can you see us? Okay, great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Essential Steps in Planning Your Food Venture Workshop, presented by Bowie State University Entrepreneurship Academy in collaboration with the Food Resource LLC. My name is Johnetta Hardy, and I am the Executive Director of the Entrepreneurship Academy here at Bowie State University. We are a campus-wide initiative and we support the president in her vision in ensuring that every student that matriculates through Bowie State University will be exposed to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Bowie State University, I should mention, is the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland. And we have got all kinds of wonderful awards and accolades. And so here at BSU, education is a priority across our campus. Our president's goal is to graduate every student with problem-solving assessment so that they will, if they work within a workplace, they're ready to chart their own future. So we're excited about that. So let me get back to the workshop. So in this workshop, it's developed to help those who are currently developing a food product or planning to do so. Today, you are in for a real treat. You'll get to hear from a panel of experts on topics from ideas and elements of creating a food product to food packaging and food labeling. But before we get to our panelists, did you know that the total retail and food service sales in the US was $6.2 trillion? How about that? And the total number of retail food and sales in stores is $850 billion. That's a lot of money. And that's why you're here today at this workshop, so you can hear more from these wonderful experts who will teach you and give you the information you need to go out there, win clients, make money, be impactful, and be of value to other humans. All right? So without further ado, let's get started with the show. And our first speaker is Lynn Swan. Lynn, business-to-business consultant, specializing in marketing communication strategies and labeling regulations compliance advisory. She's worked at Fortune 50 food companies, as well as advised hundreds of companies, ranging from micro startups and regional manufacturers to established brand leaders worldwide. And she has initiated and run LinkedIn's largest food labeling and advertising and cultural foodways groups. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Medical Dietitians from Howard University, HU, and also holds a Master of Science in Nutrition Communications from Boston University. And without further ado, I give you Ms. Lauren Swan.
Thank you. And it's nice to be here. Hello, everyone. Second day of March, we made it. And yes, I have been working in the food industry for a long time, and I have really enjoyed it. So I have just a few slides. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so we're all here. Very nice to see you. Ames and I met in cyberspace and have been connecting, and she, reads my posts and we get into group discussions, and she thought that I could talk a little bit about new product ideation. I'm not a product developer, but I have worked on staff at two major food companies. One was Kraft Foods, huge portfolio of products, wonderful foundation, very grateful for the experience. And I also worked for Vlasic Foods years ago, was a spinoff company from Campbell Soup, Swanson Frozen Meals and Pickles. It moved on to become Pinnacle Foods. So I sat through a lot of brand team meeting. It's interesting, I'm hearing a lot now about collaborative practice. We just called them team meetings, but I know collaboration is a little bit different with interdisciplinary. But anyway, I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed hearing the brand leaders. And one of the phrases I remember hearing was "fill the funnel," and it's this amazing process where they just throw out a bunch of ideas, and you can work it through. I've actually been in full day client sessions where we've done this. And at the end of the day, they've got a new product, and it starts out with all these ideas and trends and just goes down from there. So that's the big guys have all kinds of ways. They go out and do marketing research, they do line extensions, they pay attention to competition, they track trends all over the world. But one of the things with new product ideas is it meeting a need? And one of the examples that I thought of for this presentation is during the 1960s and 70s, that's when a lot of convenience products became popular and very common. And there was a reason for that. These things that were like, oh, look at all those preservatives and additives. Well, some of that came later. But my grandmother, she loved canned soup, and she loved mayonnaise, and she loved, frozen concentrate orange juice, because she knew what it was like to squeeze her own orange juice from oranges while she was living during a time where there was a wringer washer. That's how you did your wash, and you hung your clothes out to dry. And she worked full times, and she sewed a lot of clothes. So to have these convenience products come along was really, really helpful to her. It's kind of, decades down the road, we some of us turn our nose up at those things, but there was a time that they were very, very appreciated. In fact, anyone who follows me on LinkedIn probably heard me tell this story before, but during the 1970s, well, I had a job at Kraft, consumer communication specialist, and I had to catalog ads, historical ads. And during the 1970s, the savvy, college-educated wife who didn't work was buying convenience foods. These things were advertised this way. You're too smart and savvy. You're not going to make your own dressing for salad. You're going to buy the bottled salad. That's what the smart homemaker does. She doesn't make her macaroni and cheese from scratch. She buys it prepared. So it is funny to see us sort of going backwards from that. But the 1980s became a greedy and profit-driven time. And that's when a lot of these products, like a box cake mix, the ingredient list doubled in size with unpronounceable ingredients. That was all about squeezing profits out of things. And now we're living in the backlash of it. It's all about clean eating, and we don't want additives in our food. And these companies are trying to reverse engineer these profit margins to keep up with it all. But there's lots of different ways to come up with ideas. I've gotten calls from people who, I got the best spaghetti sauce ever. How do I get it to market? We'll talk about it, and they're very surprised to learn, no, you cannot make that spaghetti sauce in your kitchen at home and sell it to the Wawa down the street. No, you're not going to be able to do that. So, but luckily there are business incubators, and I like networking with people like Rachel, and we share stories about different kinds of companies that we work with and the different challenges. There's always new innovations. Look at what's going on now in the plant-based market. All kinds of opportunity there. And market needs can arise. I worked with a startup company once out near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and this man had been making a gluten-free carrot cake that was selling in local farmers markets. And then a school district came along and said, we could use that. So he had to scale up to be able to provide this to the school district for the school meal program. And he had to get, more information together. So there's all kinds of ways that new products grow and get out there and flourish, or maybe not. Also, product positioning is big. Who's your target market? Demographics, which we know are all about, age and race and education and where you live and your income. Psychographics go down, drill down beneath that and get into values. So you might have someone who's matched for the basics, but they live completely different. So those are some fascinating things to consider. And we are living at a time where there's a high level of cultural and ethnic consciousness. And we do need to be sensitive and aware when we introduce new products and market new products, who we're targeting and why, is there a health benefit to this product? We know that sometimes there are situations where individuals who are not as fortunate are the ones who are targeted for some of the worst foods. And there's a lot of stuff going on now with social justice advocacy, a lot of ways that brands can tie into that. One other story that I have, how am I doing on time? About product positioning. When I started my company, which was food labeling and marketing communications, I did a proposal for Planters peanut oil. And it was all based on the history of George Washington Carver and what he discovered, about different uses for peanuts. And it fit nicely because peanut oil happens to have a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio of saturated, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated fats. And it has a high smoke point. So that's why sometimes it's popular in stir fry. Now, this was before allergens really raged. I know that it can be highly refined, but a lot of people with allergies, if they're allergic to peanuts, they're just going to avoid it. But anyway, I wrote this whole thing up. I even went through the minority vendor program for, at the time, Planters was owned by Nabisco. I don't know who owns them now. I think Kraft bought Nabisco. And they wrote me this letter back and they said, we love your ideas, but we don't do anything with that product. It just sits on the shelf and sells. We don't put any marketing dollars behind it. We don't advertise. It just has our label on there and it sells. So that was the end of that. But I bring that story up because there are products like that. I'm so used to brand teams and marketing goals and plans and, rollouts and trade deals. That's what I used to hear about. No, there are some products that just sit on the shelf and sell. Kraft grapefruit was like that. It went through a broker. They put no marketing emphasis on it at all. So there are all kinds of different things going on out there in the marketplace. I think that's it. All I have. Yeah, there's all kinds of things going on out there in the marketplace now. Something else I'm trying to keep up with is all of the online retailing has now created a new challenge for food labeling. There are people who are complaining that when you go to label 2.0, a label that's the merchandising, the virtual merchandising, they have all the claims and all the things they want to use to sell the product, but you have to hunt for the information like allergen information, ingredient list, nutrition. So we're seeing a movement here for online virtual merchandising, having the same information when you hit the landing page in that top screen. You don't have to scroll or anything. All that information should be there. So the marketplace is changing constantly. There's always new challenges. And one of the things that I like about the online retailing, and one of the things that came out of the pandemic was more people using it than ever before. I used to work with a lot of companies that couldn't get their products on grocery store shelves. There's slotting fees and the big guys elbow them out and everything. Well, now they're able to do it. They're able to get their products out there, which I think is very nice, because I've worked with companies who have very good quality products. They just don't have the money to market them the way the big guys do. So that's something else going on in the marketplace that is, I think, opening things up a bit. And it appears that any product that is marketed today is going to put some kind of nutrition or health aspect to it. I don't know about the highly indulgent products, but most products that I see today, they're paying attention to things like the ingredient list, the nutrition profile. They want to know what kind of claims that they make. A lot of the work that I do with companies, I'm helping them research claims that aren't necessarily related to nutrition. Geographic and origin claims are really big, and they need to be verified. Of course, there's non-GMO, which is an interesting conundrum, because we have this federal law that requires disclosure and all the details about threshold levels and things of that nature. But we don't really have a law from FDA about a claim, no GMO. They have a guidance statement, but no claim. So it will be interesting to see how the required disclosure is affecting a lot of the companies who are making claims for going out and getting non-GMO third-party seals and certifications. But I do a lot of work with companies now that's about researching ingredients and, really looking at where these ingredients came from and the processing that they went through, and then the final product, and what can you call it? And can you make these claims? Can you make a claim like all natural or whatever? And sometimes they are more into that than the nutrition itself. So I think we'll be seeing more on that too. That's really all I had. I'm finishing up a little bit early. I know questions are at the end, right? Yeah, unless if any of the other panelists, I've got a few more minutes. If there's something else you'd like me to cover right now to talk about.
Well, Lauren, I forgot to mention, thank you so much, but I forgot to mention that we will have questions in the chat room, and questions will be answered after everyone has spoken. But if there's anything that is pressing, well, not pressing, but if I'm trying to see the chat room here. Linnell, are you on? We've got a couple of minutes. Do we have any questions for Ms. Swan? Okay, well, we'll come back.
No questions from YouTube.
No questions from YouTube. All right, thank you so much. Well, Lauren, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate you sharing ways to get ideas for food products and get them into the stores, and for that interesting history. I loved hearing about that, especially your mom. And it's all about, entrepreneurship is all about solving a problem, right? And being able to solve somebody's pain point. And like you said with the orange juice, I love that analogy. Your mother's like, look, if you know how many oranges I had to squeeze, and talk about convenience to put, I mean, heck, I would buy it alone for that, because it is all about time, putting more time back in your day. And as a mother,
right. I'm ancient. I'm in my early 60s. That was my grandmother who loved convenience foods. Right. My grandmother loved convenience foods because, again, she had to do all the stuff by hand. So to have a can of soup or a bottle of dressing that eliminated those steps was very helpful. It's interesting that we have evolved and morphed into a society where we're putting down convenience foods, but we claim we don't have time to cook, but we're watching Rachel Ray cook. So it's just, the intersection of all of this is really something.
We're picking and choosing where to spend our time. That's what it is.
Right.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I just want to say I've really, really enjoyed my career in food marketing and labeling. There's always something new coming down the pike. I've never gotten bored. So you choose to pursue this field, there's always something going on. Like we heard earlier about how much money it's worth. When I did research in grad school, now this was 40 years ago, so I don't know what's changed since then, but the food industry combined, that's restaurants, food manufacturers, anyone involved at all, employs about a third of our population. That's what, now again, that was years ago. I don't know what it is today, but yeah, that's a big chunk. Yeah.
Well, I will say, I'm sorry, do you want to say something?
No.
I will say this, with technology, it's advancing every industry. And now, unfortunately, hopefully that 1/3 will keep its place. But now they have robots serving you food. Now they have robots. So it's taken the place, unfortunately, of a lot of human capital. And so we have to find a way to keep that human capital in that space somehow. Because not everybody, wants to go to school, has that benefit. And so we need opportunities like this for those folks as well. So great. So Lauren, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. We look forward to the end, to hearing more. Okay, so our next speaker, and by the way, if everyone could mute their phones, I forgot to mention that as well. And if our speakers, when they're talking, would turn off their phones, mute your computer. And if everyone that is speaking would also turn off your cell phones, that would be great as well. So our next speaker is Rachel Zimser, and she will share with us, present on the role of research and development in formulating products and testing needs. And she's a certified food scientist and a certified culinary scientist and the founder of A La Carte Connections. She has experience and advanced degrees in both food science and culinary arts, including a BS in food science from the University of Massachusetts, an MS degree in microbiology from the University of Illinois, and a culinary arts degree from the New York Restaurant School Art Institute. She has been working in the food industry for over 25 years in both technical and creative roles, such as being a certified culinary scientist at the Research Chefs Association, an adjunct professor of food science at San Francisco State University, and a certified food scientist at the Institute of Food Technologies. And without further ado, I give you Miss Rachel Zimser. And I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Yep, you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here to share my knowledge about bringing food products to market from the technical side of things. And this is what I do all day long. I'm a food science and culinary consultant. I help both small and large companies bring their products to market, probably more small than large, because most large companies have internal food scientists and R&D teams. But once in a while, they're a little short-staffed and they'll bring someone like me in. But most of my work is with smaller companies that don't have a food scientist and need guidance from beginning to end. But regardless of the size of a company, the R&D process is very similar across the board. There's crucial steps that must happen in a particular order to ensure finished product success. So whether it's just a small company bringing their new nutrition bar to market, or Kraft or Unilever, the stages are very similar. There's usually more, detail, maybe in a larger company because they have more people who are involved, but it's very similar, the steps that we're going to go through today. I've divided up the stages into 8 different steps, and within each step there's other mini steps, but I tried to kind of highlight the important 8 ones. The first stage is just basically coming up with your idea. How do you come up with a product idea that you want to bring to market? Some of the clients who come to me, they might already have a rough idea, but they haven't really fleshed it out. They don't know what flavors or varieties. They don't really know what nutritional profile they want their product to have. Do they want it to be keto, low carb, high fat, low fat? So before you even begin, you have to really have a good, clear idea about what you want to do. And there's lots of different ways to get inspiration. You can go to your local farmers markets, and not for the produce, but for all of it. There's always specialty vendors there selling, dried meats and fruits and baked goods and things like that. And you can just see sometimes the really early grassroots, just starting out companies might just be selling at their market, and you might be able to see something interesting or unique that hasn't hit mainstream yet. You can go take a walk around your Whole Foods supermarket. Always lots of innovative products. There are certain stores that in certain regions that might exhibit local products, and you'll only see them in that particular Whole Foods region, or other natural supermarkets. They'll have a large array of new and exciting concepts. You can go on a culinary tour of your local city. Go check out the local restaurants and the local foodie shops, especially if you live in a big city like New York or San Francisco or Texas or something like that, Dallas. There's always going to be a lot of exciting restaurants and supermarkets and stores and places to look at. You can go to some local meetup groups. I know here in San Francisco, where I live, not right now because we're just kind of coming out of our pandemic, but before all of this, every week or so, there would be events in San Francisco. There would be financial people waiting to hear pitches. There would just be, maybe a new kind of get together for everyone working in the plant-based burger space, and they would have little samples, and you could go in there and network and just see, really early stage startup people. You can go to trade shows like Fancy Food Show, or the shows that are coming up in the next couple of weeks, including Expo West or the Research Chef Association. And you can also read trade industry journals like Food Product Design and Prepared Foods and Food Technology. Some of them are behind a paywall, but if you are a student at a university, I believe you often have access for free to all of those journals, scientific journals that are out there talking about new technologies and so on. Now, the next stage, it's interesting. A lot of people think that they should immediately jump in and start formulating their product. But I think that really the second stage is once you have a rough idea in your head of what you want to do, be it a beverage or a baked good or something like that, you really need to find your co-packer first. And you can, maybe find a few co-packers. It doesn't have to be the one co-packer, but maybe find like a handful of them that will make the kind of product that you're planning on bringing to market. And this is really important because the co-packer really dictates a huge part of how your product is going to be manufactured and made. You can't just go to a co-packer with your finished idea and expect them to be able to recreate what you just did perfectly. So you're better off talking to the co-packer first and understanding their capabilities before you jump in and start putting together all the details for your product. And unless you have a lot of money and lots of investors and you're planning on building your own facility, which is definitely an option, then you're really going to be at the mercy of those co-packers, and you're going to have to make something that's going to fit into their box, and they're not going to change their process to fit your product. So that's really important. And also you want to make sure that there even is a co-packer out there that can do what you need within, your budget. So if you want to make like a multi-layer fruit bar, or if you want to, make like a shelf-stable boxed drink, you may not be able to find a co-packer that can do that for you within the minimums that you want to hit. Maybe you only want to make like 10,000 units, and some of these may have million unit minimums. So it's just really important to identify some co-packers first before you begin. Maybe have a conversation with them about what their capabilities are, what they can do. And this kind of brings you into stage 2. Well, this is actually a continuation. I probably talked about a lot of the things that I just listed out here. You want to confirm they can make your product. You want to know what equipment they have. You want to know what are their fees for the test runs, production runs, ingredient storage. What are their certification capabilities? Organic, kosher, allergen-free. Where are they located? What part of the country? Do they have line time available for you? They could be booked up for the next 2 or 3 years. So you want to see at what point they'd be able to fit you in, how many weeks notice. Can they store your ingredients for you? What if you have frozen ingredients? Do they have frozen storage on site? What if you need like a blast freezer after you take your product out of the oven to cool it down quickly? Do they have all these capabilities? Do they have a warehouse that you can store that product in afterwards? Can they help you sell the product online? Some co-packers offer up, Amazon type services and they help you sell it right from their facility. Will you get to own your formulas? That's a question that you'll have to discuss with them. And do you like the team? Are they giving you the time of day? How do they treat you? That's all a very good sign from the get-go. If they don't really give you the time of day and they don't give you attention and take you seriously, then that's how they might be treating you down the road. And you really just have to go with your gut on these things. So after you have some co-packers in place, at this point, you can feel comfortable creating your prototypes. And you may have worked on a few prototypes before you went through the co-packer step, and that's fine. Maybe you're playing around in your kitchen already, or just making products and showing it to friends. But really, this is where your prototype creation is going to be a bit more serious. And why do you need prototypes? You need prototypes to show investors. You need prototypes to show to stores or potential future customers. You need a prototype to raise money from family and friends as well, the angel investors. And you want to get feedback from other people, maybe from family, maybe from friends. Maybe you want to bring a bunch of nutrition bars to your running club or to your social clubs and just get some feedback on what people think about the direction that you're heading in. And ideally, you'd be creating these prototypes in a way that you know that that co-packer can make it down the road. There's two different ways that you can make prototypes. If you have a nice big kitchen with lots of space, you can do it right at home. And this is good for simple products like bars, trail mixes, spices, and more. And again, kind of understanding how that co-packer is going to be making it down the road. You want to have a good scale, like a measuring scale that goes out to the second or third decimal point. And you have to get these from scale manufacturers. Don't buy it from a culinary store because they're not accurate. And you might need some tools as well. You might need a pH meter or a refractometer, a moisture analyzer, a water activity unit. And, you know, at this point, it might even help to hire a food scientist if you don't have that knowledge, or hire a consultant to give you some guidance, because you don't know what you don't know. You may not realize that pH is going to be an issue and you need to monitor that while you're making your beverage. Or maybe you really do need to keep track of your moisture levels and your water activity for bacterial concerns. And you know, working with a food scientist, or even having a discussion with the food scientist at the co-packing facility that you plan to work in, just get all the right guidance, do as much research as you can, because these are really important steps when you're making your prototype. You don't want to just go to your co-packer and they're going to send you home and say, hey, you have to redo everything because your pH is all wrong, your water activity is all wrong. And I know this because a lot of the customers and clients who come to me, we have to redo everything that they've worked on for the past year because they didn't know the food safety and co-packer rules that they had to follow. Another option for making prototypes for maybe more complicated products or process that you can't do at home or in a kitchen is you can find a co-packer that maybe has like a small test room. They can do small little mini batches for you, like a pilot room. Or universities across the United States, mostly food science departments, will have pilot plants with small scale equipment, and they use it to teach the students, and they also will rent it out to entrepreneurs and small companies to work on different things. I went to UMass Amherst, and this is back in the 90s, and I remember Ocean Spray was coming out with dried cranberries, and a lot of the drying work they did right there at the University of Massachusetts, because back then we had all this drying equipment, not just an oven dryer, but really high-tech drying equipment that was similar than what would be needed for production. So, there's a lot of things that you can't do at home that you can find a university, a pilot plant to help you with. You might want to retort, pasteurize, spray dry, hot fill, high pressure processing, freeze drying, canning, blast freezing. These are all things that require equipment and knowledge and training, and it can get expensive. The co-packer might even be too expensive. They might want to charge you thousands, but a university might be able to do this for you at a reasonable cost. And they all have different programs. All these different food science departments have different entrepreneur type programs and different equipment. And you just have to go on their website and you have to call them, because it's not always very clear from the website what they have. So after you've worked on your prototype and you've gotten something down, at that point, you really need to do some optimization. There's a lot of details to consider during and after you make your prototype. And you don't have to get bogged down with those details originally, but as you're going through the stages, there's a lot of other things that you'll have to consider. So for example, ingredient sourcing. You might be able to use some ingredients from a store, but ultimately you're going to have to find legitimate suppliers with all the proper paperwork. Even salt has to come from a documented source. You can't just buy it at the store and hand it to your co-packer. You might have to look at cost reductions. You may find that the ingredients you're using are too expensive. Maybe you can't use one version of an ingredient. You're going to have to use another. Maybe you can't afford to go organic. So you'll have to really keep track of your ingredient costs. Your certification decisions. You have to make sure that the ingredients that you're sourcing and the co-packer you found, of course, are going to be able to handle the certifications that you want. And the nutritional profile. And this is really actually something that should be done at the same time as the original prototypes, but you have to keep in mind like what you want the nutritional profile of your product to be and formulate accordingly. So if you want vitamins in there, you want to kind of get those in there earlier because that can affect the taste of your product. If you want to have low carb or keto, you have to really manage those numbers on a spreadsheet. And the next step, and I've put these in stages, but some of them are kind of happening side by side, but there is a general order. You have to think about all of the different risk assessments, mostly bacteria, but there's also quality issues and so on. So you have to think about water activity, your packaging material. Is your product going to get stale? And if it is, then it has to be packaged up, in nice thick packaging. Your moisture levels and your water activity have to be low so it doesn't support bacterial growth. You may need to have preservatives to maintain color and texture and inhibit yeast and mold. There may be other safety concerns such as low acid canned foods. You'll need to have a kill step if you're baking. If there's raw ingredients involved, you'll want to make sure you're matching pasteurization requirements and the co-packer. If you're with a co-packer, then they're going to help you manage a lot of these, but you also just have to be aware of them. And you have to also know where your ingredients are coming from. Do you have all your specifications with all of the documentation on there, like what bacteria, what the levels of bacteria are in your spices, like all that documentation should come when you order your ingredients. So you have it and you know exactly what the risks are.
Hi, Rachel.
Yes.
I hate to interrupt. So sorry. This is so good. I am truly enjoying this. Ames and I are sitting here. We're eating this with a knife and fork. It's such good information, but unfortunately, we have we're out of time. We've got 2 other speakers, and we're trying to be mindful of the time so that folks can get questions in at the end. Is it possible that your slides can be available for those who want to see them?
Yeah, definitely. I can send that out.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, because I know I would love to see the next couple of months. This is, I mean,
I'll just say a quick sentence on each slide. I won't go into any detail and they can read it, but you're going to have your test run and your scale up, and then you're going to do your shelf life studies, and then you're going to have your real production run, and then you're going to have your finished product and so on. And that's pretty much about it. And on my website, I have a lot of free downloads that you can access, as well as my ebook, where I put a discount code if students wanted to learn more. But the free downloads are very useful. I provide a lot of information, including a spreadsheet tool for doing your own formulations. And with that, I'll stop, and everyone can read all the rest of the details later.
Rachel, what's your website?
alacarteconnections.com.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much. This is great. I'm going to that website. Information. All you folks out there that want to get your product in the stores, this is so great. What you need to do, and this is being recorded, so I hope you'll come back. You'll go to Rachel's website, and she's got free downloads. You can't beat that, okay? And so thank you so much again, Rachel. Our next speaker, Mr. Thomas Fitzgerald, is the owner at Access Creative Group. He has B2B sales and business development professional. He's with over 30 years experience, assisting a wide range of clients with their branding, marketing, communications, printing, and sustainable packaging needs. He has expertise in primary and secondary regulated labeling, printing, packaging, brand protection, and supply chain solutions for life sciences, specialty food, CPG, and FMCG companies. He's currently developing solution partner network for augmented reality / interactive print and packaging solutions. All right, without further ado, I give you Mr. Thomas Fitzgerald. Tom?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to thank Bowie State and the Entrepreneurship Academy for having me part of this conversation. I'm really excited about this because, like all entrepreneurs, I'm passionate about what I do. I've been doing printing and packaging. I've been in the printing and packaging industry for almost 40 years, believe it or not. And I've seen an awful lot of evolution over that period of time. But what I'm finding the more I engage with small businesses and food startups, there is a lot of passion out there around their products. And sometimes the history that's behind those products. I want to share my screen so I can have something to reference. Most of the content on this presentation is going to be more visual because I work with a pretty wide spectrum of customers. A lot of the work is with, as Rachel was talking about, early stage companies that are just getting their concepts down. So a lot of it is really trial and error, R&D, and a lot of questions and answers. One of the big topics currently in the packaging industry is trends and innovations in packaging materials and solutions. There's an awful lot of conversation lately about sustainability, down gauging, actually making packaging more conducive to the environment. As everybody knows, we just went through a very difficult 2-year period with the pandemic. Ironically, the packaging industry is bigger and busier than ever. Lauren had made reference to the overall food space being a $6.2 trillion industry. Packaging actually is a $1 trillion industry. And because there's so many different aspects and types of packaging applications, not just in the food space, but all different types of industries. Some of the main topics these days are a lot of what had been offshore to Asian countries is being reshored back to the US or North America, mainly because of the supply chain constraints that have been existing. Ironically, materials for packaging, paper, glass, aluminum, plastics, they're all in pretty short supply right now. So part of the reason why there's such an inflationary uptick is because a lot of the packaging supply chain requirements are going up. Again, these are topics that have been very, very popular lately, or very, very integral to the evolution of the packaging industry. Sustainability is probably the most important topic right now because we're all trying to develop solutions to the environmental crisis that we're facing. Oops. There's 3 primary types of packaging. Primary packaging, which is packaging that comes in contact with a product directly. Think of a bottle or potentially a pouch or some kind of a flexible container. Secondary packaging, a lot of the time, will have a marketing application, a display in a retail environment. And tertiary packaging is the shipping aspects, like what you can see in the background of this image. Tertiary packaging is corrugated boxes or any kind of a rigid container that can go through the supply chain. This is actually an example of primary packaging, and it also happens to be a client of mine. It's a startup company based in Philadelphia that's developed very, very high-end, almost like European cafe style desserts. My client was very specifically after a glass package or a glass container because it kind of emulates desserts in the European cafe market. As a result, he ended up waiting significant periods of time to get this material. But it was part of the branding that he wanted to show. This was my contribution to his packaging. This is Rachel talked about prototyping in the food space. We also do a lot of prototyping in the packaging place. This was a sleeve that we created for my client. He took his glass jars and practiced with this material so he could make sure that it fit properly. And this is the branded application after we had printed it and finished this product for them. Another client of mine is this plant-based cheese company. They actually make their products out of cashews. This particular packaging is actually called Inmo labeled. It was a thermoform tub and lid that the labels were molded at the same time that the tub and lid were manufactured. They wanted this specific type of packaging because of the market they were going into. Basically, they're in the cheese area or like the cream cheese section of the supermarket. That's just another angle of the container. This is not my customer, but it's an example of packaging. The craft brewery industry is obviously growing very rapidly. These particular cans are direct printed. There's actually an inkjet capability out there now. We can print directly to the aluminum cans. A lot of these craft breweries have labeling that gets mounted on the cans. From a sustainability point of view, that makes recycling those cans more difficult because you have to take the paper label off the can before it can be recycled. Another example, this is not my customer, but it's a stand-up pouch, a fairly specialized pouch in that if you look at the top left corner, it's a spouted pouch that allows this product to be used on a refill basis, where you buy maybe some kind of a soap dispenser and you refill it as you need to. It cuts down on the amount of packaging, which is obviously an important part of what we do these days. Okay, now this is kind of an example of the different types of clients I have. The trays in the back are considered secondary packaging, but they fit into a retail environment. Think of being in a supermarket or even a convenience store where there's a last-minute opportunity to grab something. A lot of confection packaging. A lot of my clients are in the chocolate or confection industry, and they use a lot of this type material. Other examples of secondary packaging. Again, a lot of chocolate companies, confection companies. The reason why I like to show this particular image, if you look down on the front of the Raspberry Crunch product, that's actually a die cut window. And we created a die cut image to correspond with each of the 6 chocolate products. But it's a great branding mechanism. Again, another chocolate company that I have as a client, we produce these wrappers that are fed into a fairly antiquated piece of equipment that wraps the bars individually. There's a foil material that goes between this wrapper and the chocolate itself. I'm sure you're all familiar with subscription packaging or subscription ordering through e-commerce. This is an example of 2 different types of packaging being used collectively. And there's a lot of technology evolution in terms of the printing and finishing processes for this type of work, which is a topic we could spend a whole hour on. This is an example of tertiary packaging, but it's actually used for branding purposes. This could be shipped through either the mail, the US Postal Service, or any of the carrier organizations like UPS or FedEx, but then it can be used in a retail environment for branding. Again, displays are an example of packaging. Just this image itself shows primary, secondary, and theoretically tertiary packaging, because a lot of these displays are easily set up. They're part of the shipping process. Takeout food is an area where sustainable packaging will be a huge growth area. These are examples of a molded fiber material. Through the pandemic, the consumption of takeout food grew like crazy, as everybody knows. And what we have to do is come up with solutions that are not going to just add plastics to the waste stream. This is a client of mine that they used simple sleeves like this on standard or stock items for their branding. Another whole separate category in the tertiary area is cold chain packaging. This happens to be an example of a corrugated liner that replaces a styrofoam container for frozen product shipping, which is also a fairly significant growth area during the pandemic. Yet another example, this is a recycled PET plastic. It's 85% recycled material, but it's just a good way to substitute a more sustainable packaging item than having to use styrofoam. And part of my profile was talking about augmented reality, interactive print and packaging. It really has not taken off significantly yet, but I think more and more people are going to be using the actual packaging mechanism as a way to get content or information about the product, about the company, perhaps where the product was originated from in terms of materials or ingredients. I'm sure people are familiar with how QR codes were used so much during the pandemic, either as a substitute for a menu, but that technology is just getting started. And I look forward to that being a fairly significant part of interactive or branded packaging that is considered smart packaging. Part of the service that I provide is actually the creative, the graphic design part of the process. And this is one of the gentlemen that I work with. And some of the following images will be work that he has worked on, either individually or with me. This happens to be a mutual client. This is a startup company in the Boston area, and they ended up producing 3 different SKUs. This is a stand-up pouch, and this pouch was produced in quantities of about 5,000 to 6,000. So the quantity of a product doesn't necessarily have to be a huge quantity. Another example of graphic arts for pouching. This is another client of ours, mutual client. I talked about retail displays. This is an example of a simple display, but a lot of the time this can be used as a shipping mechanism if it has a paneled cover on it. Again, a client of mine in Geese. As you can see in the bottom left corner, there's a QR code, and they're using that for the clients to see where their broth is originating from. This is another chocolate product. More chocolate. And that's it for slides.
Great, Tom. Wow.
I know it was a lot to show, but it really only scratches the surface of what the packaging industry is all about.
Yeah, and to see it advance the way you did, that is incredible. And how technology is now being infused to make it grow even more so.
What's nice about the industry right now is that small brands have access to the same kind of branding capability that the big brands do.
That's exciting.
Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, geez, again, I'm sitting here taking all these notes, learning about sustainable food packaging, coming up with solutions. You know, it's just, You know, you don't think about that, but I'm telling you, through this pandemic, this has been a learning experience for a lot of people. And you've seen a lot of different growths in different area, and you really need to pay attention for those people who are in the food industry. So this is so exciting. So we're going to keep going because we're running a little bit behind, but thank you again, Tom. And lastly, we have the label guru and regulatory consultant and founder of Food Resource LLC, Miss Ames Perry, who happens to be my neighbor, literally in this building right next door. She's been in the food business for more than 30 years. She is experienced in a variety of processing environments, including meat, vegetable, dairy, and grain. She has worked in food plants and corporate food environments and has trained food professionals in labeling for FDA, USDA foods, and in good manufacturing practices. Her company offers training individually tailored to meet their clients' needs. She received her undergraduate degree in food science from University of Maryland, College Park, and her graduate degree from Johns Hopkins. And Ames is going to share with us all about food labeling and the products and key aspects of the products. So without further ado, I give you Miss Ames Perry. Woo!
Hi. I don't know if we can get the slides up. No. What do I need to do?
Okay, there we go. You're good, Ames.
Thank you so much. Can you give us this? Okay. There we go. So I will be talking about food labeling and some of the basics you need to keep in mind. Slide. Oh, now food labeling is overseen by two main regulatory agencies, FDA and USDA, but the smaller circles also show that the Department of Commerce, specifically NOAA, they also do seafood regulation along with FDA. The Federal Trade Commission, these are the folks that will be looking not only at your labeling, but your website, displays that may not be on your package. So you need to follow the regulations on your website. And then the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms oversees any alcoholic products. Okay. Most food regulation is under USDA or FDA, and it can be challenging for someone who's new in the food area to understand the differences. USDA primarily oversees meat, poultry, saluriformes, which is a fancy way to say catfish and certain relatives, eggs, ratites, which are ostrich and emu, and voluntary inspection of things like bison and venison. FDA oversees non-meat products, including seafood, along with the Department of Commerce, and shell eggs, and most other products that are not meat or poultry products, except for exotic meat products, which are things like, again, the bison and the venison, if you're not doing them under voluntary inspection. So sometimes it can be very challenging to discover what's FDA and what is USDA. And eggs are, I find, one of the more amusing ones. Eggs in the shell are regulated under FDA. If you break that egg out of the shell and freeze it or salt it or sugar it or dry it, it's a USDA product and requires approval through USDA. If you make that egg into an omelet and add ham to it, it's a USDA product. That same omelet with only cheese is going to be an FDA product. So,
Interesting.
so.
Yes.
Sorry. And of course, there's a similar thing with fish. all three of these, or the first three fish, are going to be under FDA, which does seafood along with Department of Commerce, and the last one is a catfish. So USDA oversees that. Slide. Okay. Sources of food regulation are many and varied. Congressional acts, which we see sometimes the new bioengineered labeling that you'll begin to see on packaging, came out of a congressional act on non-GMO food products. The Code of Federal Regulations is the largest body of regulations. Title IX and Title VII cover USDA. Title IX is labeling and basic meat and poultry regulations. Title VII covers eggs, organic, and child nutrition. And you can actually look these up if you want to online, or even buy copies from the government printing office. Title 21 has the FDA regulations and labeling and your dairy standards. Labeling guides are put out by both FDA and USDA. And there's a food standards and labeling policy book, which is put out by USDA and covers a lot of the requirements they have for food labeling. I'm not ready yet. Can you go back? Policy memos, directives, notices, and guidance documents are put out by both FDA and USDA. It can be really a good idea to go to the USDA website and the FDA website and look at the types of guidance they will offer you for regulation, because there's a lot on both. Okay, what is on a label? There are mandatory features that are required on your labels. And FDA and USDA, while they look very similar, they do have some different requirements. There are a lot of details on your labels. A lot of them Lauren and Rachel covered in terms of claims you want to make and certain things you're going to use for branding. And there are different package panels on a lot of packages. It's important where you place the mandatory features on your package. Okay, you have on any package, you have to have at least a principal display panel. And this is the portion of the package that consumers are most likely to see first. Sometimes you even have two principal display panels. And when you have two, they're alternate principal display panels, or PDPs. So the other panel that you might see on a label is an information panel. And it's the portion of the package immediately to the right of the principal display panel. However, depending on how your package is shaped and the size of it, your information panel may actually be on another part of the package. So it depends on the room. And cylindrical packages the information panel must be it needs to be it can appear immediately to the left or the right of the principal display panel. So this is slow. Sorry, I'm having the advance is not working very well on the, there we go. Okay, so, and this is an overview of the mandatory label features that you find on FDA and USDA products. Product name, always, always, always. There are so many products that I see that have no name that you can discern. And I once was reviewing a product name, and it was an FDA product, and they were called reindeer noses. And I looked, it was a chocolate product, was a Christmas chocolate filled with peppermint, but the product name, according to the company, was reindeer noses. I said, well, you can say reindeer noses, but underneath you need to say chocolate filled with a peppermint cream. Oh, thank you. Yes. There's net contents or net weight on a lot of products. Your ingredient statement is required if you have more than one ingredient in your product. Nutrition facts panels, a handling statement if the product is perishable, and a signature line which identifies your company. It's a strange word. The product name is known in the business as the statement of identity. Has to appear on the principal display panel, has to be legible, has to be in English. You can also put it in another language, but it must be in English. Slide. Okay, 3 types of product names: your fanciful or coined name, descriptive name, or your standard name. That means it's in line with a standard that FDA or USDA has set up. Fanciful name always requires either a descriptive or a standard name. So, sorry. Net contents. It has to be truthful, has to be in the lower 30% of the panel. And there are rules about the type size you need to use depending on how large your principal display panel is. Ingredient statement, very important. And it needs to be the ingredients in a descending order of predominance. They're listed by common and usual name. I've had clients try to obscure the name of a common ingredient by calling it something else. It's not allowed. Predominant by weight needs to be on the PDP or the information panel. Okay. Nutrition facts panels. Actually, if you have a very small business, this may not be required. However, they're not difficult to get nowadays. And it makes your small company competitive with larger companies. Handling statement is more common on a USDA product, although FDA does. Obviously, there are FDA products that need refrigeration or freezing. You have to follow the wording that appears in the regulations. Okay, signature line. Need to go back one. Anyway, the signature line is where you put your name. You have to have the name of the manufacturer or the distributor. So if someone else is co-packing for you, you can put on your label, packed by, distributed by, prepared for. You have to have the city, state, and zip. If your company is in a directory, if it's not in a directory, address. So. On USDA packages, you also are required to have an inspection legend, also called the bug. And here are 3 types: the meat and catfish, poultry, and exotic. And this is when you voluntarily have your bison inspected. So I don't know what this thing is. USDA also requires safe handling instructions on raw product. or if the meat or poultry component has not received a lethality treatment, this is required. So, next slide. Here are a group of other label features. Of course, you frequently have a picture of your product. You have romance copy sometimes, and need to be careful in your romance that you aren't making claims. There are other things like the nutrition keys, which are the calories and fat, the little bubbles on front that give you some of those nutrition facts. Product claims, okay. I'm being told to speed it up. So, and these slides will be available afterwards. We'll put it wherever we put it.
Yes.
So, slide. So who's looking at your labels? USDA, FDA, the Federal Trade Commission. If you're exporting or importing your product, Border Patrol, your competitors, consumer groups, consumers, plaintiff lawyers, and market surveillance groups. So, and I have a couple of examples of labels, but as I say, this slide set will be available. So thank you so much for your attention. And I also really want to thank the Bowie State University Entrepreneurship Center for giving us the platform. And my presenters, who are people that I admire so much professionally, and I really appreciate the time that they gave to us this afternoon. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Ames. And we're going to open this up now for questions. Linnell, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, I know you. We've got lots of questions in the chat room here. Great, our speakers are opening their mics so that they can see, opening their videos, and ready for questions.
All right, this first question goes back to Lauren. They ask, do you have any companies you would recommend for packaging for a small business?
No, I don't, but I think we had another speaker who might. Tom?
Yes, I'd be happy to recommend some folks for you. It's what I do day in and day out. And I really enjoy working with small businesses. You end up dealing with normally the principals of the company, and it's a learning experience, not just for the customer, but also for me. I learn about products and how I can be of assistance.
Good, and I get questions like that, so it's always good for me to know about the resources that are out there. A lot of people I worked with over the years have retired, so they're not doing, so I need to keep in touch, and know who's doing that.
No, I'm planning on being around for a while.
Yeah, so am I.
Excellent. All right, this next question, I believe is directed to Rachel. Is there a list of co-packers or a place to research ones in your area? And will the presentations also, they're asking if these presentations will be available after today's presentation. I believe that was already answered.
Yes, the presentation will be available. And yes, there are ways to find co-packers online. There is a website. Well, on my website, I do have a free download on how to find a co-packer. It's got a whole bullet pointed list of tips, and it's a free download. But probably one of the better search engine sites is called PartnerSlate, PartnerSlate. It is not a free service. They charge a fee, but that's a good thing because all of the free co-packer search engines that are out there are not kept up to date. The information's all wrong. So this person who started this website, PartnerSlate, he actually maintains it and keeps it up and puts in information, and it's a great resource. But there is a fee attached to it.
If I could just add one thing to that, I don't have any specific interest in this service, but there's an online organization called Startup CPG. They actually have a Slack streaming facility too. They do list different segments of the whole supply chain, co-packers, ingredients companies, logistics companies. That's something you might want to consider looking to. And then there's a Facebook group called OMG CPG, which is a bunch of companies, startup businesses that basically share their information over a network.
It's a lot of work to find a co-packer. There's really no easy fix. You can go to multiple sites and find a lot of different options for what you want to do, but you still have to call each one of those companies and ask a lot of questions and see if they're a good fit. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of free ways to get information online. There's trade shows. One trick I use is I'll go to the website of a trade show that's coming up, like Institute of Food Technologists or an ingredient show, and I will hunt on the exhibitor section and see if I can find a supplier or a co-packer that just happens to be exhibiting by using keyword searches or so there's just a lot of ways, but it's never an easy search, and there's a lot of questions that have to be asked and a lot of research that has to go into it, spreadsheets and you know, knowing all the details to ensure that they are the best fit for you.
Thank you. And then Ms. Zimser, during your presentation, you had mentioned about some publications. Could you give us those names again?
Yeah, well, a lot of publications are online right now, but and some of them are free and some of them you have to pay for. There's some technical food science journals, like Food Technology, Journal of Food Science. There's also other magazines. It used to be called Food Product Design, but I think it's a different name now. I might have to look that up real quick. Food Product Design. It's now called, I don't remember what it's called anymore. They changed their name, but they run all the trade shows. So Prepared Foods Magazine, that's another trade journal that has a lot of good ideas and good inspiration. You know, and also just going to the website of the Fancy Food Show or Expo West, you can sign up and they will send you nonstop literature and put you on lists to receive information about all the companies that are exhibiting and trends and so on. So a lot of it's kind of moving online now. There aren't as many hard copies the way there used to be, but all of the hard copy items are now online as well. Culinology magazine is another good one. So,
and Rachel, some of them, I think Prepared Foods is one that has free subscriptions for certain classes of people in the food industry, and startups are certainly one of them, but you need to give usually a professional email address. Your Gmail address won't get you the subscription. So, but if you go on their websites, there are a lot of those free magazines and they actually have great articles and ideas. So
I found that I've called on a lot of different vertical segments of the economy over the years. What I find in the food space is an awful lot of community, a lot of people willing to help each other, a lot of ways to skin the cat. If you're, obviously this is a great resource, this Entrepreneurship Academy, but you'll find that there's incubators, accelerators, networking groups, meetup groups. It is a plethora of information out there. It's just a matter of reaching out and finding it.
Yeah, that is so true. Contact the land grant college in your state will often have a food business incubator startup, and the Small Business Administration often has programs in it that you can go to. So yeah, and now that as the country's opening back up, your local IFT, you know, get on mailing lists for local groups of national groups. And hopefully Expo East will be in Philadelphia this year. It was last year, but I didn't go down there because things weren't looking that great. But if anyone is coming up for Expo East, let me know and we can, get together and chat.
I'm going to try to.
Lauren, can you give us the food group, your LinkedIn food groups? Because those forums can also be wonderful for asking questions and receiving help.
You're right. I can put them in the chat and you can find them on LinkedIn. One is food labeling and the other one is cultural food waste, but I will put the links in the chat.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Clubhouse. It's another social media platform. It's all audio, it's live, and it kind of covers a very wide spectrum of topics, but there's a lot of food-oriented clubs or rooms on Clubhouse that might be of interest to these people as well.
Great, thank you. This question is for Mr. Fitzgerald. Do you find that more businesses are moving toward using recyclable packaging than styrofoam?
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much food brands, tiny, small, up through the biggest players, are concerned about sustainability. The problem is the solutions are still kind of evolving. And it depends on what it is that you're packaging, because the worst thing you can do is try to create this green statement and then have your product not arrive safe and secure. So there's an awful lot going on innovative wise in terms of materials and techniques. Styrofoam is obviously something that we're all trying to find a solution to, at least in the cold chain space. One of the companies that I represent has a corrugated insert in that PET liner that replace styrofoam. The problem with that type of solution is for small brands, it's a very expensive way of fulfilling their products direct to consumer. With the way the pandemic has been, logistics, 3PLs, shipping, all those aspects of the supply chain, the costs have gone up astronomically. So it's not an inexpensive way of delivering product.
All right, thank you. Ames, you spoke in your presentation about the different product names. Can you explain what makes a fanciful name?
Fanciful name, I had an example on the slide, chicken and stars. You look at chicken and stars and you go, what is it? So underneath you would need to have like chicken with star-shaped noodles, chicken soup with star-shaped noodles or something like that. And there actually, Lauren, I don't think there's a standard for chicken noodle soup, but if the product has a standard, you should also use the standard name for it, along with the fanciful name. Great example people use a lot is corn dogs. Corn dog is a fanciful name. It's a batter dipped Frankfurter. And you will see on most corn dogs, it says corn dog, and then at least 1/3 the size, it will say batter dipped hot dog, Frankfurter, whatever term you're using. So if you can have a fanciful name, but you have to have a true product name with it, either descriptive or one that meets a standard. And you have anything to add to that, Lauren? Lauren is also
because
labeling
it reminds me of, I remember a new brand manager, we were going over, it was a chicken meal. And at the time, white breast meat was real big. Well, if you label it breast meat, you have to say with rib meat in 1/3 of breast meat. And he kept crossing it off. And I kept telling him, this is not a choice. But they finally went with white meat chicken as opposed to breast meat, because then if you just say white meat chicken, you don't have to have the with rib meat on it. So yeah, that's our world, Ames. That's what we do.
Yes, and there are a lot of little things like that, that a labeling consultant like Lauren or myself can help you with. So.
Well, great, well, great. Well, it looks like we are coming very near to the end of our program. If we, I'm sorry? Yes. So we're going to go ahead and close and get ready to close out. Any closing remarks by our speakers?
Who should we, if you want the slides, who should we send them to?
Send the slides for those people who are on the line for our speakers. Please send the slides to Entrepreneurship Academy at bowiestate.edu. And then for those folks who are interested in receiving the slides, send an email to Entrepreneurship Academy at bowiestate.edu. And we will make sure that you get a copy of those slides.
I just wanted to add, Ames, you said earlier, a product name can be in a foreign language. And there is a regulation. Actually, I'm not so sure on the USDA side. On the FDA side, if you put any language on the label that's not English, you have to put all your required elements in bilingual, unless you're selling it in Puerto Rico and it's in Spanish, then it's okay. So yeah, and I actually work with a company that ended up trademarking a brand name because they didn't want to get all caught up in this foreign language stuff, which can change over time. You know, salsa is actually a foreign language word, but it has become so accepted here as a product that we don't think of it that way. And then the other thing about the nutrition label, it's good to keep in mind, even if you're a small startup and you're exempt, some retailers, brokers, and distributors will not even carry your product unless it's on, the nutrition facts is on there. Because at first the companies were like, oh, we don't want to put it on, years ago with NLEA. And then when they found out you can't get into that retailer, I'm like, well, this is interesting. The government says put it on and you don't want to do it. But the, you know, the other one. And then finally, one other thing I think is interesting. I was during the 1980s, I was in that whole yuppie thing, and lean cuisine, those frozen blocks of food that my sister told me, she said, I don't have to think about weighing or measuring or anything. It's interesting to look at today. People are ordering things like the fresh stuff, Fresh Direct, and they mix it up themselves and cook it, and they like it. I'm like, well, I could just buy it and cook, you know, cut it up myself. But that's one of the things with trends you look at over time. It's really fascinating. So stay tuned, never a dull moment.
Lauren, you're young. One of my earliest food memories is eating TV dinners.
Swanson frozen, yes. Did you eat the brownie first? No.
Salisbury steak first.
Those are pretty good. Well, thank you. Rachel, did you have any closing remarks? Anything you'd like to leave our viewers?
Yeah, I think that it's really important as a consultant, and I help a lot of entrepreneurs. I see so many entrepreneurs that by the time they come to me, they've already wasted a year messing around in their kitchens and doing things wrong. And it's just a good idea from the get-go to work with a professional, even if it's just getting some guidance from them on the phone on how to get started, but don't jump into it on your own. Don't assume that just because you know how to cook, you know how to properly formulate a product, because you will end up wasting a lot of time and money if you don't really know the right direction to go in. And, you know, time is money. So if you want to be efficient, then from the get-go, know what your pHs have to be, what your water activity has to be, you know, understand all the rules before you jump into it.
Great.
Or buy Rachel's book for $150 and you can get an hour of consulting with Rachel. So
that is true. You know, if you just want the ebook, I threw up a 50% off code, and the book alone is only $19.99. So with the code, it's like $10. And that book is a great resource. And then, yeah, if you want an hour of consulting, there's an option to have that too.
Great. Thank you all so much. We're out of time. And again, speakers, could you please, when you send your PowerPoints, if you could send, make sure your email's attached to that in the PowerPoint. So when we send it out, our viewers will also, they'll have that information already embedded in your PowerPoint. So thank you guys again. This has been so informative. I've learned a lot. I'm ready to get in my kitchen. I'm ready to ideate, create, and help this world eat safer, healthier, and sustainable.
I hear she makes a great sweet potato pie, but I haven't tasted it.
I'll bring that in, don't worry, because I want your feedback. But thank you all so much. Please think, Ames and I are talking about having a part 2, looking at co-packers. So stay tuned. We've got more to come. Everybody stay safe, be blessed, and bye.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Have a good week.
Thank you, speaker. Take care. Thank you, Lauren, Rachel.